Hey friends! After a long, unexpected hiatus from this Photography 101 series, we're back this week talking about aperture. Hopefully you've had enough time to play with your camera and the white balance, the ISO, and the shutter speed. And this week we're going to talk about aperture. It's probably the most complicated thing for you to understand, but it makes such a huge difference in your pictures. If you've heard of bokeh, that's how aperture is how you create it. So you can play around with that too. It refers to how large a hole in your lens will open up to allow the light to hit the sensor. The larger the opening, so the lower you drop your aperture, say like a 1.4 or a 2.8, depending on your lens, the more light will enter your camera. I like to drop my aperture down low when I'm taking portraits, so I've got one lens that'll drop all the way down to 1.8, and I like to do that when I'm doing close-up shots because the face will be in focus, but your background will be blurry, and that's what looks beautiful in portraits, especially children. You can get their eyes really sharp and kind of blur the rest of their body with the aperture setting. But you can also pull it up to a high aperture, say an 18 or a 22, if you want to get a full landscape shot, or if you want a family in your picture and have the background not blurry. You'll want a high aperture. But with a high aperture, it closes the hole in your lens smaller so you get less light. So as you're playing on manual, you're going to have to adjust your shutter speed as you adjust your aperture. And as we talked about the little cheat sheet inside of your camera, you can just adjust that really quick so it levels out to the center like we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So really it's complicated, but it's easy at the same time. So if you think about, and I won't go into all of the details about it because you're new to it, so you'll want to just think about, okay, if I have a low aperture, that means that my background's going to be blurry, I'm going to let in more light, but the subject in front of me is going to be more focused. If you have a high aperture, your background will be in focus as well. You'll let in less light, so you'll have to adjust your shutter speed and maybe crank up your ISO a little bit. But everything will be in focus. And I'll give you some examples of what different apertures look like in some pictures I took this weekend. Your lens affects your aperture a lot. Some lenses only drop down to, like this lens only drops down to 3.5. But if you want a really low aperture like 1.2, which is really fun, you're going to pay $1,000 for a lens that'll drop that low. The lower the aperture, the more expensive and nice your lens is going to be. But kit lenses are great lenses, and you can practice your aperture with your kit lens as well. And if you haven't checked out Camera Camp, cameracamp.net, my friend Justin Wright, who's a photographer in Nashville, he's a wedding photographer, has started that site, and it's full of wonderful informational videos for you. It's kind of like a subscriber service, but you'll learn so much about using your camera. I cannot recommend it to you enough. It's cameracamp.net, and yeah, just look below for some more examples of aperture, and if you have any questions, please ask away. I'm here for you. Alright, thanks.